In a certain sense, we are addicted to the familiar. We are reinforced by the known, made comfortable by that which keeps itself within a certain frame of reference. Some of us have very comforting and comfortable familiar states, and some of us have very uncomfortable familiarities. And yet, most of us are afraid to move beyond that. Now, this is not true of everybody, because there are certain people who are addicted to stepping out of the familiar, who find empowerment in that, who find excitement in that, but then they, in a way, create a new familiar. Something that is identifiable, something that is knowable, and something in which they can navigate. And most of the time, life offers us enough of the familiar that we can operate effectively and happily, or with a certain amount of resignment to what is. The challenge to the comfort of the familiar is when something truly unfamiliar happens, that pulls us out of the ease and well-being, or generalized well-being, of what is known. Sometimes it's a tragic incident, things happening to us that come out of nowhere. Sometimes it's even tragic when it's predictable. Watching people fade out of your life can be really hard, because we take so much for granted, and so when somebody is gone, there's often a missing piece, a hole that wants to be filled, and sometimes is and often is not. But it becomes a new familiar. We grow into, okay, that's what it is. And there's something wonderful about it, and there's something problematic in that the beginning of a spiritual life is, for most people, a kind of discomfort with the familiar, a kind of, is that all there is? A sense that, almost like suffocating in the ease of daily life, wanting more, wanting greater vision, greater clarity, greater comprehension of the universe. And often not knowing where to go to get that. A lot of our teachers and teachings in the world are ways of giving us a hold on the unknown, a way of making the unknown familiar, a way of saying, if I go to church every Sunday morning, I will be at peace with the mystery of life. If I live according to certain commandments, I will be familiar with the world around me and able to navigate it. There's often a huge promise at the end of this journey of something even more wonderful. But in truth, that more wonderful also promises to be particularly unfamiliar. And so as much as we all want what waits at the end of the rainbow, there's a sense of not really. Let it be like this. Let it be like that which I like, which I enjoy. And yet everything tells us that the familiar is going to be completely disrupted, ultimately taken away. And knowing that produces the existential angst of human experience. Because the more we in our social life affirms the familiar, reinforces it for us, it ultimately is impermanent. And that's at the core of Buddhist teaching, the very word impermanence. That all of this that seems so embraceable, that seems so affirming, the known is temporary and will collapse. And knowing that is essential, because that is how people move into the spiritual. Most people are looking for what is the thing that doesn't collapse. What is the thing that is permanent in the impermanent? And Buddha did not say that you will find something permanent. He basically said everything is impermanent. So the search for that which will be endlessly comforting, endlessly embracing, has a false note to it. Because even that is temporary. And many of us find exquisite moments of transcendence, exquisite moments of oneness, of attunement, of stillness, of beauty. And those of us who have found it for periods that are more than a few seconds really start to think, I'm there. And in a way you are there. But then it goes away. And learning how to let it go and not miss it, or not feel something is wrong with you, and not feel it has to be brought back. Learning how to let it go and arise when it wants to and leave when it wants to, that's more of a secret of how to be in the world than to find it as a state of permanence. We seek what we're looking for in the manifested world. We exist in a manifested form. We have come into being. We are creatures of this being state, this human being state. I was talking to Talia, my granddaughter, yesterday. I said, you know, you're called a human being, not a human doing. And yet everybody wants to do. And we're only comfortable being when we're doing. And I said, you know, you don't have to do all the time. You can actually stop doing occasionally and just be, and it's very comfortable. It's very familiar. Even when you're 5 years old, you can stop for a little bit of time and just be quiet. And she said, like meditating. I said, yes. She said, we'd meditate every day in school, which is her school, which is really wonderful. And so she practices being every day. And she knows what I'm talking about, which is amazing to me. So she's starting to get a sense that there is a place within us that simply is. And that you don't have to do anything, one, to be there, or two, you don't have to do anything to avoid being there. It just is, whether you are trying to get there or not. There's just this place of being, of human being. And it is a place of such familiarity and ultimate comfort that it's surprising that most people didn't learn in kindergarten how to get there. That somehow we are thrust immediately into the doing realm, into human doing, and nobody talks about human being. Why that's not taught from the beginning, I have no idea. But that is one of the core teachings of this world. And we have to begin to initiate it as best we can in people around us. But first we have to find it in us. And when you find that place of being, you discover that it's not taught necessarily verbally. It's not taught through lessons. It's taught by being. How you be. And when I am with my grandchildren, and where you guys are sitting is one of their great play spaces, they run around this room with such excitement. They jump off the couch, they jump off the stairs, they hide under that table, they move around this place, Talia and Elijah, with such joy and energy. And I just sit with them and I roll on the floor with them and I carry them on my back and we just be. Now it sounds perhaps like doing, but it's really just being. And the joy in it is infectious. And then we sit quietly. Each of them sits right where I'm sitting. And they practice doing what they think it is that I'm doing. But they're really getting a sense of the simplicity that comes from not having to affect the world. Just be in the world. And we all have that a little bit when we're children. And then most of us kind of lose it. We lose it because our education teaches us to cognate, to put it into mindful form. Our education teaches us to take tests, to compete intellectually and on many other fields. It really, it starts to structure us in such a way that we don't see value in or have a hunger for the being. You might even call being playing. Playing is a part of being. It's a part of a way of being where you're not working toward a goal. It's the most goalless thing I've ever seen. Play is like it just is happening. And work and doing can be completely playful if you are taught how to play at doing. Have fun. Make it easy. Don't make it something you have to grade. Oh, you're being you're not being good enough. What does that mean? Just be. Just be what you are. Let that being arise, because if nobody stops it and nobody starts to confront it, I mean, you do have to do certain things, because there are moments in being that you step outside of barriers of safety. You step outside of the confines of where you can be harmful to another person, or they can be harmful to you. You know, there are times where Talia and Elijah bump into each other and knock each other on the ground, and I have to go, whoa, careful guys, don't do that. You know, there are certain modifications, and those do become familiar, and they do become known. And we do start to stratify, if you will, the world in which we can behave safely and the world where we can't behave safely. And you start to avoid the unsafety in being, and that's completely natural, because this world requires a certain amount of care and functioning. But what starts to really happen when you start to get caught in doing is that you lose touch with the natural force of being. You lose touch. And when you lose touch with that, you start to find all of the sadness and unhappiness that goes along with being out of touch with you. And finding a way back to that place in you that is just happy to be is, in a way, why we meditate. Because we're not schooled in it, because we're not taught it, you have to find a way to teach yourself, how do I get back to simple being? and the joy of being. The world shows us very quickly that there are barriers and boundaries. It does it through pain, it does it through fear, it does it through projection of this idea of not being. There comes in human beings a real fear of not being, which rises up with the very essence of being, because in an absolute system, being and not being must go together. You can't just be. Non-being becomes part of that. In the duality of human experience, we know there comes a point where you are no longer being. And we start to see it early. You squish your first bug. You come across the first dead thing you see on the ground, and you go, what's that? And it's a fascination with not being. But not being becomes, for many of us, a kind of terror, and you start to live in a way avoiding not being. You avoid the thing that you're afraid of. And so meditation is really a doorway into allowing the totality of the package to reveal itself. So one of the extraordinary things that happens in sitting still is you start to see that being is. And that the fear you have of not being is a man-made fear. It's a fear based on the unfamiliar, on something going beyond the realm of your knowledge. It's entering the twilight zone of your existence. And you don't want to go there. So what people do is they keep themselves in the familiar package of being alive, and they avoid anything that will take them out of it, outside of religious beliefs perhaps. But the spiritual seeker says, I will journey beyond the known and beyond the familiar. I will journey into the heart of being. And they start to sit still and go deeper and deeper and deeper. And one of the things you start to experience when you penetrate the heart of your own heart, the core of your being, is you start to feel something that is no longer a person. It's no longer you. It is no longer ego identified. It is not limited. And you start to feel this thing deep within you that is like liberating. It's freeing you. And it's freeing you to be something beyond you. Beyond the person, beyond the identity, beyond the fear, beyond the sense of non-being. It just is. It has a quality of appearing to be deathless. But it is so simple and so expansive and so vibrant that you begin to know that it is really who you are. That the secret of being is in being. The secret of being is not in doing. If you're looking for the answers to what this all is by going out into the world and thinking and building and creating art and and going to war and doing all the things that we do in the huge world around us, if you think it's out there, if you think it's in love, if you think you'll find the person who's going to give you everything you're looking for, of course you're going to fail. Because everything around you is impermanent. But as you start to dig deep into this place of being, I cannot tell you that it's permanent because I don't know that. But it feels, as it expresses itself, to be so alive beyond you, beyond your limited sense of being. It so contains within it the love you're looking for, the sense of fulfillment, the sense of wholeness, the sense of remarkable ecstatic truth. It's just in you. And so when you start to study and learn to be all the stuff you're looking for outside you starts to reflect it back into that space. And so you no longer need to get love from outside to feel the love you're looking for. And because of that deep, powerful sense of love within, you express it outwardly, and then everything reflects it back to you. So you start to feel loved from all over, from everywhere, from everything. The trees are loving you, the atmosphere is loving you, people are loving you, not loving you like you're my favorite thing ever and I want to hold you forever. It's something else. It's like, I am here for you. I am here because of you. I love you. I love your being. I am your being. We are one thing. This thing radiates out because you have sought being and discovered that it is everywhere. Everywhere. And it is a constant state until perhaps it's not. There is definitely, even within that space, something that goes beyond being. And I can't explain what it is. I can call it nothing, no thing, nothing that is. It's the ground in which being occurs. And it takes unbelievable courage to sit in that space, to give up the need for being and just allowing what is. And that's where the practice goes. It just goes deeper and deeper into something unfathomable, something so vast, something so inexpressible. And then you sit here trying to express it. And it can't be done. But there is something going on here that I can only tell you this much. Whatever you do in the world, it surpasses it. Whatever you achieve in life, it's bigger. Whatever you don't get, kind of won't matter. The life you've had is just play. It's a journey in time. It's an experience. It's a remarkable experience. It's a joyful experience or terrible experience, but it's only happening within the framework of this being, and then within a framework of something so much bigger that it doesn't even matter. And to be caught up in the doing, to be caught up in the business of life is fine. We're born for that. It appears to be essential and needful that we be here. But liberation is to be here and aware of being, and aware at the same time of not being. It will not give you any answers, and I've said that many times. And you won't after a while even care about the questions. You're just no words, nothing. You're already that. So all of your suffering and struggles and dramas and fears and ambitions and all of that are already resolved in that. I can tell you that, and it doesn't matter, because you have to find it for yourself. And you'll find it for yourself only by looking, only by struggling to get there. And then what appears to be the mechanism, giving up the struggle and realizing you've been there all along. But that struggle creates a certain kind of tension, a certain kind of reaching out to the what-isness of life, and it makes a demand on it. It just says, I will not be satisfied with what isn't real. I will not be satisfied with a life that doesn't enfold me in its truth. It's something where you announce to the very vastness of being that this is essential. It's essential that it be found. and then you discover it cannot be found, it already is. I look at people who tell me they want this, but they don't show up for it. People who want it occasionally, who want it whenever things are going bad, or only when they're going good. I find it in people who are conditional about it. I want it and I'll get it if I can have this and this. You know, if life will deliver that, then I want it. Or the opposite, you know, if life doesn't give me these things, only then will I dig for this. All I can tell you is Rudy said to me, you have to do this every day. You got to sit every day and you've got to make this the core of your wish. And I think that the only reason I can speak to you about any of this is because I sat every day for 45 years. And I mean, there was no 24-hour period that ever went by when I did not sit. Ever. And that was frustrating because I kept trying to get there. I kept struggling so hard to get there. And they'd only give it to me for little moments. You know, 10 minutes. I described sometimes for 3 or 4 months at a time, sometimes longer. But it always got taken away, always. And finally, when the awakening took place, and that kept expanding and expanding, I understood, to the best that it can be understood, that it cannot be taken away, that it comes and goes, that it's all like breathing, it's all like weather, it's all what it is. Don't try to grasp any of it. I sat here yesterday with my grandchildren playing, and I kept thinking, can I take a picture that will freeze this moment? Can I hold them in a way that will freeze this moment? Is there anything I can do that can hold on to this? Nothing. Nothing. It's just, it's passing as it goes. But boy, did I love every second of it. Every second. And that's how I'm living. That's how I'm trying to live. You know, I'm not perfect on any level, any more than anybody is perfect, you know. There are moments where my forgetfulness is amazing at this point. You know, I mean, amazing to me. And, you know, I have moments of anger and frustration and concern and all that stuff, and I just watch it like clouds passing through the sky. I just watch it. I go, okay. I don't hold on. I don't identify. I don't make it anything other than what is. And basically, most of us are doing that, but some of us are holding on to these things in such a way that even though they've passed long ago, they're still causing suffering. It's so foolish, because it all goes. It all goes. Everything that you are worried about and fearful of and fighting and wishing for and dreaming could happen or wishing it didn't happen, it all goes. Puff. Over. So, if you can let yourself let go, that's kind of the core teaching. Surrender. Ask for help. Please help me to surrender. Help me to let go of this stuff. Because ultimately it's taken away. And why should it be wrenched away when you can hand it away? Just let it go. You can do it. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's just stupidity. It's habit. It's holding on to the familiar that gets us lost in ourself, that keeps us fighting to hold on to something that will not last. Be open to the unfamiliar. Any questions?
Well, I'm thinking about what you just said, and then last week when you talked about a leap of faith. And I think of my own life, I feel like it's sort of come to this point in a funnel. And, you know, you just don't want to go down that part. And there's got to be a leap of faith to let go, but there's no knowing that it's going to turn out okay.
No, there's no knowing.
There's no sense of knowing, and I like to do things with a sense of knowing. I don't like just to, you know, I like to be, you can only be so smart and know all the facts, and then you just gotta let go and let it happen.
Absolutely.
And there's no knowing. I mean, it could be terrible what happens. But it's like
Well,
life, you know, you've resisted and...
Yeah, no, I know. It could be terrible, but it won't be permanently terrible. It won't be. It can't.
Well, in my mind.
In your mind, yes. No, of course.
It could be permanently
Of
terrible.
course. But that's the great gift of the meditative awareness, that it is what it is only for however long it's going to be. And you know, sometimes you end up with a life sentence in jail. It's going to be permanent on some level. But some of those guys, I taught meditation in prisons, and they know more than most of us, I'll tell you that. They're there. They go, I get it. And if they're looking for liberation in a whole other way, because they're never getting out of that jail. They're going to find it here, and they're much more serious about it than others. Not everybody. I mean, this is a selected group of prisoners, but it's very valuable to find that. I love that you're using the funnel moving down into something because the black hole, there's a black hole in every one of us.
Yeah.
We're all being sucked into it, honestly. We call it death on some level. And they're discovering black holes everywhere now. They're all over the place.
Right.
And nothing escapes it. Every memory, every thought, everything you've ever known goes into the black hole and goes, we don't know where. We don't know where. But I used to be terrified, I've probably talked about this, of the idea of death as a permanent, not knowing anything, never waking up again. My mother used to say, death is going to sleep and never waking up. And I used to say, how could I ever enter a morning and not want to smell the coffee? Because that coffee, my dad's coffee in the morning, was the thing that I woke up to. That smell was like, a new day. How could I ever not have that? And now I'm at a point, which is interesting for me, that I totally accept the possibility of absolute nothingness as a gift. It's the idea of somethingness forever, which is a little bit intimidating. And I cannot tell you whether it's nothingness or somethingness or an alternation of the two. Hard to explain what that ultimate thing is. There's a sense in the absolute of having it be both. Whatever that means. I mean, how do you grasp that? But this black hole thing is, the idea of it is that we enter into something in which we take nothing that we have or know with us. It's all gone. So it'll be whatever it will be. That's the way it works. And I think we're all skirting black holes our whole life, but they're at the core of our own galaxy and probably the core of every human being, everybody. We're being sucked into this thing, and finally it's like, okay. There's a beauty to it. There's a beauty and there's a grand design to it. And who knows what that is, but it's built in. I mean, I love how big this thing is. I love how expansive it is. We are all one with this thing. We're not separate from it on any level. We are the entire breathing, expanding, contracting, manifesting, unmanifesting reality of the universe. Period. And so if you're walking around thinking about, why didn't I get that job promotion? Or why did the universe beat me up this way? I get it. I get how myopic we become with all that stuff. But that suffering is suffering you can let go of if you start to get in touch with just how vast and big you truly are.
So when you had, think of your biggest leap of faith, so life led you to a point and you could either dive and do it, or you go, but I could stay here, but it doesn't seem like I'm alive. Like the leap is the only thing that I will be alive. The other is sort of the death, and then you'll just get sick. It just...
Well, I've watched people do both, and for me, the biggest leap of faith, I've had a whole series of them. I've left very good jobs, really good jobs, to go elsewhere. I mean, on and on and on. I mean, just, my parents would say, how can you do that? You got a great job. How can you give it up to go hitchhike to India? Why would you do that? Why would I give up? Why would I take a drug that might explode my sense of what the universe is? Why would I give up a job? I was curator at the Whitney Museum in New York. Why would I give that up to move to an ashram in Indiana? You know, why would I do that? And then I gave up Indiana to go to live in Illinois, which was where we knew nobody and nothing, and it was really the worst period of my life. And then finally, Blanche and I and it was really Blanche almost more than me, who said, we're moving. And we went to L.A. with nothing. With nothing. We had $5,000 is what we had, and 2 kids. No job, no prospects, nothing. But she knew it's either going to happen in Hollywood or it's not, and we're never going to know until we go. So each one of these huge leaps were fundamental in everything that ever took place in this particular life. And I learned the value of that. Could I have fallen apart at any one of those stages or chosen not to? I mean, Blanche and I went back to Illinois, to DeKalb, Illinois, last year for just a day, and I looked at it and I saw what it would have been. I saw what my life would have been, and I had intimated that before we moved, and so had Blanche. And so we both said no to that. And going back to see what we had escaped was like extraordinary. But we also looked at those people who had made peace with that space. You know, the main street now had more bars on it than it had ever had when we lived there. It's like every other shop was a bar. Everybody who was living there was in a state of, oh God, you know, what am I doing here, kind of. But they had made peace with it in their own fundamental way, you know. I didn't stay there. I always push people to make leaps if they can. But don't do it because I said it. You've got to do it because something in you says it. And then you take, it's acts of faith, leaps of faith. The universe really understands a leap of faith. And I think they reward it, not necessarily by giving you what you want, but I would use Rudy's terms here, or the Rolling Stones, giving you what you need. A leap of faith is rewarded by giving you what you need. And you don't know what you need really until it starts to operate. And then you realize that was the right thing. Even if it didn't give you what you wanted, it gave you what you needed. And that's a great gift. It's a great gift. And your life moves forward. You know, or it doesn't give you. That's really fascinating. The universe not giving you often is the greatest gift imaginable. But how do you know that? All I can tell you, and I said it now 12 times, whatever you get, it's not going to last. Everything is impermanent. So you get, it's temporary, it's fun to get it. I mean, I look at these rich people, these billionaires, you know, thinking they got something. You know, they have the yacht, the castle. You know, we're watching everything in our culture right now, all these huge wealthy people trying to run the show. It doesn't last more than 80, 90 years. I mean, these big guys, the guy who owned Paramount, he doesn't run it anymore. He can't function. He had to give up the studio. He had to give up his whole company. Why? Because he's old and he's going to die and it's all going to go away. What did he get? He had an interesting run. It was fun. It was fun, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know if it was fun for him, you know, because, I mean, people like that connive and suffer and then their money, everybody wants their money and they don't want to give their money away and they get married 4 times and they get married to people who really only want their money. It goes on and then it's over and they leave this world like scratching to hold on. That is not a good ride. I mean, it may look like a good ride to some people, but it's not the ride you want. And the ride you can have, promise you, the ride you can have is one of total wonder, joy, and amazement at the simplicity of just being. That is the ride you are on if you want it. Let go because it's all getting taken away anyway. Blanche and I are trying to think of how do we empty out our houses. We don't even have kids who can take all the stuff we have. What do we do with all the stuff you want it? Yeah, I know. It may actually come down to that because
I'll let you know what
you can all go through the houses and pick this and this and this. But we're still trying to figure out what are the things what's meaningful at this point. What still has resonance, you know, for the end of the ride. Because the end of the ride is becoming very visible, and that's really extraordinary to know that the end of the ride is becoming visible. It's hard to see that when you're 40, but it goes like boom, that fast. Suddenly 40, 70, boom. All you did was acquired and acquired and acquired, and now let go. Who knew it happened that fast? Nobody, not when you're 40. But it does. It goes really fast. And then it's over, and then who knows? Who knows? Anyway, it's an extraordinary thing. We're all caught in it. It's very familiar to us, and it's totally unknown. And right now we're all entering the twilight zone of contemporary culture. Stuff's going on now that's so out of the mainstream for us, I cannot tell you. And I know it's a 1-year anniversary of my experiencing virtual reality for the first time. I did it on my birthday last year. 4 days ago, Josh took me to his company where they have this new virtual reality thing set up. And I tried it again. And I put on this virtual reality headset. It has evolved so far, so beyond anything I had tried before. They give you these controls that you manipulate the reality that you're in. And it is like, I mean, it's so experiential and it's so real that you cannot believe that another reality could become that accessible to you. And I heard on NPR last week, they now have this new virtual reality. It's called haptic something sound, but I don't know how it works, but it gives you feeling so that you can shake hands with somebody in virtual reality. In this virtual reality, I opened drawers, I took a donut and put it in my mouth, and the donut disappeared, and then crumbs fell on the ground beneath me. I was in a room with a magician who was this incredible guy, and he gave me a wand, and he said, put it in here, and I put it in this thing, and the light shot, and I was reduced to somebody this big, standing on his desktop, and the papers were spreading out everywhere, and I'm walking over these papers, and then a spider came at me, which was now that big, and he was afraid of my wand, and I had to repair a robot. I mean, things were happening. They were so phenomenal, and all I could do was go, what does this mean? I was so excited last year about virtual reality. I came away from it this other day saying, uh-oh, what have we done? What is this? Because it's so powerful, it's so engaging, it's so remarkable, and it's going to become familiar. And it's going to become multiple realities that we live in, but how does it get you out of all those realities back into being? That's my concern. I am in love with virtual reality because it's so explosive and expansive and full of the unknown possibilities, but the teacher in me keeps going, whoa, you have to find your way back to this. And I think I'm going to have a smaller and smaller and smaller audience for that as time goes on, because the wonder of all of those realities is going to be so engaging that no one's going to want to go back this way to find it. They're going to want to go out that way to find it. There was one moment actually where I was standing in the center of the universe. Everything fell away, and there were just star systems everywhere. And I was like there. And it was like almost spiritual, but it wasn't. It was virtual reality. They gave me a paintbrush with all of these things in a room. It could be any room I wanted, but this was like at the beginning it was a white room with all these colors, and you just start painting, and you're in three-dimensional space, and your painting just surrounds you, and it's as elaborate as you want, as detailed as you want, and you're creating in 3 dimensions. I keep wondering if Picasso had that, what would he have done? It's beyond sculpture. It's so fantastic, and you can preserve it. But you have to go back to virtual reality to have it. But the excitement of having a palette with all these colors and different kind of line forms and things, and I could make bubbles that filled the universe and stars and snow, and it was like wonder upon wonder. And this is just coming out. It's just starting. So we're in a new universe, and I have to say, as I've said 6 times already, we've got to root into this inner space, or we're going to lose it. I don't know who's going to still be there teaching it, because everyone's going to just be going, it's out there, it's out there, it's out there, it's out there. No, it's only out there because it's in here, and the mix between the inner and the outer is crucial.
So you don't think that because it can't not be, so isn't there any way that it can be? Isn't it even in virtual reality, because it's everything? You know what I mean?
No, clarify that. Say it again.
If being is everywhere and everything, so you're saying it's not in virtual reality?
Oh no, of course it's there. More there than you can imagine.
Yeah.
Being is in all of that.
Right.
But
right.
being is right here now, And 99.99% of people I know are not aware of it. They're not aware of being. They're only aware of doing. They are being, but they're not conscious of being. It's all, we're lost in the doing of it. We're lost in it. We're not aware of it. Becoming conscious of being, becoming conscious, period, is an extraordinary event which is at the core of spiritual practice. How do I become conscious? Everything that leads you into unconsciousness is problematic. And now if we can create world upon world upon world that you can experience, literally experience, and interact with, that's only going to pull you deeper and deeper into the manifested form, and it's going to be harder to reel people back into be, just be. I mean, it's wonderful out there. The whole thing is wonderful, but it's not wonderful if you're lost in it. It's only wonderful if you wake up in it, if you can have clarity, if you can have enlightenment. Then you can live it all. That's the whole idea, live it all. But don't get lost in the outer. Find the balance. We do an eyes open meditation because it's both inner and outer simultaneously. That's really valuable. It's, they call it the razor's edge because, some of mom called it that, but it's the razor's edge because this is where we live. We don't live, most people live in one or the other. You can go into a cave and live there your whole life, but that seems cut off from the world. You can live in the world, but that's cut off from the cave. This is the dynamic that I find, and Rudy showed me, to be an extraordinary way to be present in what is, both inner and outer. It's all one thing, but to get caught in one over the other is to be caught and lost.
So I know you're into non-attachment, but at the same time your talk is faith, right? It has,
Talking what?
When you talk, there's an undercurrent that is, like you use the word by design, right? This mystery that even though we're non-attached and we don't want to be narcissistic and control it, there's also this perfect intelligence. And I hear you kind of like reference that, right? Kind of.
Those words are complicated, but
right.
Yes, I agree with you. There is something. There is. It's arising out of. You can call it something or nothing.
Right.
What you can, and you can call it design, or you can call it mistaken achievement.
Right.
It can come out of anything. For me, I can't label it with assurance at this point. I can just go, it is. As we all know, everyone who's sitting here, there's no doubt in your mind that this is. Is there? You look very doubtful.
Not when I'm with you, but I am in this field, and I was, this virtual reality and all this stuff, that is creating a different field. If there was a design that is taking the consciousness outward rather than inward.
Yes.
And I know it's spiritually ill-advised to kind of try and read the mind of the universe or think that way.
You can try.
Well, it's pretty scary, right? That, it's scary to me, moving into a world where the field goes farther and farther.
Well, it's scary to the ego mind, definitely. The ego mind cannot make that journey. That's why it has to be dropped. The ego mind can only go so far, and then it's like, cannot function anymore. And at that point, you're either in a state of terror or a state of extremity that's just horrible. And either you learn to let go of that and be free, or you don't go there. And you just go back into the world of stuff, the familiar. And that's what people do over and over and over. Even yogis that I know who do what I call yo-yo yoga. They go out, they come back, they go out, come back. But the thing is to let it go and just let it be whatever it wants to be. And that's a remarkable state. And it happens to involve things like virtual reality, the politics of our day, the world we live in. All of it's there, all of it. And you can try to make sense of it. The human mind can make sense of a certain amount of it, and then it can't. And when it can't, you either, I don't know what you do when you can't make sense of it anymore, you go a little crazy, or you just let it go. And there's something very profoundly assuring when you let it go. It's like, oh, It is. It just is. That's a beautiful thing. Okay? Okay, guys. Thank you. Be here next week.